morning, boys and girls. I hope you've had a good week at school. I'm sure, like me, you're really looking forward to a week off with no schoolwork to do. To start this morning, I want us to have a think about our five senses. Now, if we were in the ark at the minute, I would ask you to put up your hand and tell me who knows the five senses that we have in our bodies. But I'm just going to have to tell you because we're not together at the minute. So the first sense we have is our sense of smell. So we can smell nice things like mummy making the tea or maybe popcorn. And there's also bad smells. Sometimes the farmers out in the fields spray the fields and it doesn't smell very nice outside. So we couldn't really, it's very difficult to do without your sense of smell. Our second sense is the sense of touch, and that's being able to use our hands to be able to touch things and to be able to feel different textures in your hands and be able to feel what different things feel like and what it is like to touch them. Then our third sense is our sense of taste, and that's when we put something in our mouth, we can work out what it tastes like. So there are some things that taste really, really yummy, like chocolate or sweets, and other things can taste quite bitter and maybe not so good, and you maybe don't like them. Maybe it's something that mummy gives you for your tea and you don't like the taste of it. Then another one of our senses is our sense of hearing, and that's when we can hear somebody talking to us. We can hear cows mooing in the field, we can hear cars going past on the road, and that's a very important one as well. When you're crossing the road, that you can hear traffic coming. Then our fifth sense is our sense of sight, and that's being able to see. So we're able to look out the window and we're able to see the birds flying, we're able to see the sun and the clouds and the blue sky and the grass, our friends to play with. So all of these senses all together in our bodies help us to be able to enjoy everything around us in the world. Today's story is about a man who was born and he couldn't see. He was blind. And that just means when he was born, he had never been able to see. So the minute he was born, he couldn't see at all. When you're a tiny baby, when you're born, things are a wee bit blurry. But as you get a wee bit older, things start to be able to focus and you're able to see. But this man could never see. Now let's just think about that for a wee minute. Close your eyes and imagine that was all you could see. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Can you imagine not being able to see? Think about all the things that would be much more difficult, like your schoolwork or getting dressed or having a bath, crossing the road. So many things would be a lot more difficult. Today, there are lots of things available to help blind people, like guide dogs that help them be able to cross the road and find their way around. They can also learn Braille, which means that they can read using their sense of touch. They touch the little bumps on the page to be able to read, and they have to learn that a bit like we learn to read words. And if you look down when you go to a pedestrian crossing, when you're waiting to cross the road, you'll notice that there are bumps on the pavement. And these are to help blind people to know when they are approaching a safe place to cross the road. But in Jesus' day, it would have been extremely hard to be blind. Blind people often had to beg to get money and food. People treated them badly because they thought that the reason they were blind was because of something bad that they had done and that they were being punished. Now, we all know that our actions have consequences. Sometimes these are good and sometimes they're bad consequences for something that we've done. If you remember back to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, God told them not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Did they obey God? No. And the consequence was that God threw them out of the garden, and from that time on there was sin in the world. Jesus healed many people in the Bible and he did many miracles. And in John chapter 9 we find a story of the blind man who was healed by Jesus. It tells us that this man was born blind, so he'd been blind from birth. When Jesus saw this man, his disciples asked him, who had sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So the disciples thought that the little boy, the little baby, or his parents had done something that had made him be blind. Jesus replied, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God might be seen. Jesus went over to the blind man when he saw him when he entered the town. He spit on the ground and made some mud with the saliva from his mouth, and then he put it on the man's eyes. Jesus then told the man to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. The man obeyed Jesus and went to the pool of Siloam, and he washed the mud off his face. It must have felt really, really dirty. Sometimes it's nice to get dirty, but I'm sure this man really thought, what on earth is going on? When the mud washed off his eyes, what do you think happened? He could see. And I'm sure he was so excited. He probably ran home to tell his friends and his family. When they saw the man, he told them what had happened and what Jesus had told him to do. And the man replied, Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I did just as he told me, and now I can see. The man was not afraid to share what Jesus had done in his life, even when some of the people rejected him and didn't believe him. They thought it was a different man altogether. They didn't believe that it was the same man who was once blind. Now, this miracle reminds us that we must always obey God, even when what he's asking us to do seems a bit strange. It is also important for us to share with others what God has done in our lives, especially others who don't believe in God. In John chapter 9, the story goes on to tell us that some religious leaders didn't believe the man. Jesus then told the religious leaders that just like the blind man needed physical sight, people need spiritual sight also. This just means that all people, and that includes you and me, need to believe in God and ask him to open our eyes and help us to be able to worship him. Now, in your ARC pack this week, you have a sheet which has worship time at the top. There are some YouTube links there that you can click on, and Mum and Dad can maybe look those up for you, and you can sing some of those songs. There's some lovely songs on there. Open the Eyes of My Heart is one of my favourite ones. You also have a colouring page of Jesus putting the mud on the man's eyes to heal him. And then you have a Spot the Difference page, and there are 7 differences there to find. Now, that's it for this week, but I really hope you have a brilliant week off school and that you enjoy not having to be online and doing all of your home learning. And we'll see you back at the ARC again next week. Bye.